Hi, it's a big crowd. We got to put on a good show, Cher. I'll be Sonny, you be Cher, and I got you, Beta. We're going to have a murderer's row of historians and nonfiction guys coming up. So we're just doing the monkey dance for the Brinkley and Rove and company that'll come out and knock your socks off. John Paul, George Ringo, they'll be up right after Sonny and Cher open for you.
I saw the Sonny Bono concourse at the airport.
Oh, I drove the Sonny Bono highway in order to get here. It all works out.
You guys can hear me? Yeah, okay. All right, I'm very nervous. I admire this guy a lot in many different disciplines.
I'm sorry, Derek Jacobi is in the front row. Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
I just want to say hello because you, sir, are one of the reasons I'm an actor in the first place. What a pleasure. Derek Jacobi, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, my. Oh, my.
I love him. And didn't you tell me that if you could play any Shakespearean role, it would be Iago?
It would be Iago or anyone
Iago.
that I've known him so long that I used to call him Derek Jacobi. That's how dumb I was. Long ago. What a pleasure.
Can you picture Tom as Iago or?
I can picture Tom as
Remember when you guys were going to do every one of Shakespeare's plays on television, and you did Hamlet?
I did Hamlet and Richard II.
That's right. So, 1980, 81, I'm guessing. And those of us who had gone to junior college said, Derek, we are going to watch Derek Jacobi do Hamlet tonight. And it was on video, and it was there was no hold for laughs on video. That was the main thing. So Shakespeare blew by as fast as possible. What a pleasure, what a pleasure.
So. What is the very first thing you would do as President of the United
Thank
States?
you, I'm glad. All right, thank you. I would order the change of the name from Fred Waring Drive to Tom Hanks Drive. Because I am actually of a generation where I'm not quite sure who Fred Waring is. I know he was a band leader, but Dinah Shore I'm hip to. Fred Waring I'm not. Fascinating. What I would have to do if you're going to ask me a serious question is I would say that the rebuilding the infrastructure of the United States is an absolute economic imperative. Other countries, developing countries, are kicking our butts because they have an infrastructure that they're constantly improving and working on and laying down, and we have stopped doing that. And the United States of America used to be the country that understood infrastructure, even back when it was railroad lines and interstate highways, and you could make a telephone call from Maine to Rancho, Mirage, California. So that would be what I would do. And then secondly, I would order cookies and milk for everyone.
Wow, if only we had a builder in the White House. So when we talked about this last year, you told me that you didn't want to be president because you didn't want to answer phone calls.
Yeah, how do you do that, you know? How do you say, all right, get Kim Jong-un on the phone? I don't, there's a lot of, I get to dodge a lot of phone calls just because I'm a flighty actor. Could you imagine having to make phone calls like that? I wouldn't know how to do it.
Well, I asked David Geffen, a mutual friend of ours, what to ask you tonight, and he said lots of people think he could be elected president as a Democrat. And then he wrote Ronald Reagan, and then he wrote a smiley face, and then he said, but much better, and then he said, if only.
Well, understand this about Ronald Reagan. His phone stopped ringing as an actor.
Burn.
He didn't get any work. And if you look at some of his better films like Newt Rockney All-American or Bedtime for Bonzo, it's no surprise that his phone stopped ringing as an actor. And then he became that spokesman for GE, and he went around the country and spoke at all the corporate kind of events. I remember him as being the host of Death Valley Days, brought to you by 20 Mule Teen Baraxo. And lo and behold, became president of the United States. So I thought, oh, and he was the host of Death Valley Days, right? I thought, is that how you become president of the United States? Stand in front of, a 20 Mule Teen and say, on tonight's show, Will Gears performs as an old prospect. I couldn't quite fathom it. But here's the thing: they're still calling me to go to work every day. So I'm not. It's like I'll vote for Derek Jacobi before I vote for me.
Well, the low point of my life was when I gave an inauguration party in 2008 when Barack Obama got elected. And because I never give parties or go to parties and I'm the worst party giver on earth, somehow all the cool people like Tom and Bruce Springsteen and the publisher of the Washington Post and the executive editor of the New York Times were all on the outside in frigid Washington weather, and every junior reporter at Politico was on the inside slurping up my Grey Goose. And I would like to make you an offer that if you run and you win, I'll give another party.
Well,
and I'll let you win.
Your party, understand, the Washington that night was kind of like this combination of Super Bowl, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, the Brooklyn Bridge opened, and the Chicago Cubs won the World Series. It was not mayhem in the streets, it was revelry in the streets. Everybody was just having this fabulous, wonderful time. And there were a couple of those pinprick destinations that you said, can you get into that place? And we went out. You imagine Maureen Dowd's townhouse in Georgetown. You just think, well, the place is huge, obviously. There'll be a veranda, and there'll be a backyard, and there'll be a circular gravel driveway, and there'll be room. It'll be like the Beverly Hillbillies live there or something like that. And instead, it's this kind of like narrow thing. It looks like Archie Bunker would live in it. And there were so many people in it, it was actually going like this, like it was in a cartoon. The house was going back and forth. All of the windows were fogged over, so you just saw these spectral things moving back and forth. Every now and again, a little piece of frost would clear, and you'd see some lady, not you, but some other lady with a glass going. And there was just no way you could get there. And after a while, we ran into Tom Brokaw and Meredith out front, and so we just took just a straw poll of not being able to get in under any circumstances. So we went back to the Four Seasons, had bowls of chili.
Well, Larry King did come up and say very accusatorily to me, "Is this a doll's house?" And Alan Greenspan said, "What is this, a mosh pit?" So I think there was a baby conceived there that night. It was so crowded. But I heard you were...
Anything stolen? Were we missing ashtrays,
Yes.
jewelry, bric-a-brac?
Yes. I'm not kidding, yes.
Was there a mattress fire by any chance? There was a big party.
Yeah, almost. So I heard you were yelling, "Could someone throw me out a beer at least?"
Yeah, I did.
Is that a true story?
Yeah, I was.
I had my nephews bartending, which was a disaster too, because I didn't think they knew how to make martinis or anything that George Stephanopoulos was ordering.
Well, Bruce was thirsty, so I was trying to... Bruce Springsteen, I'm sorry.
Yeah, when Bruce Springsteen doesn't get in your party,
Bruce
you know
Springsteen
it's
is
a
the
failure.
Fred Waring of our generation.
All right, well, I will stop tormenting you about being president, but did you, I wonder if you've seen the rest of the crowd that has jumped in. You know, did you see your Senator Kamala Harris on the CNN town hall, or
I did not, no.
Elizabeth Warren drinking beer on Instagram?
Yeah, I missed that, damn.
Howard Schultz being heckled at Barnes & Noble.
I saw that. That was pretty funny, actually.
someone telling him to go back to Davos with the other billionaire elite who think they know how to run the world.
Well, I think you can get your finger on the pulse of an awful lot of things by hanging around with other billionaires in Switzerland, don't you?
Did you see Beto's teeth cleaning on Instagram?
You know, I don't even have a search engine on my iPhone anymore in order to make my life easier. So I've missed all these highlights, Maureen. Are you telling me that Beto O'Rourke cleaned his teeth on the Instagram and I missed it?
Yes.
Somebody in my office is going to have hell to pay. How could I miss that?
So, do you think any of this crop can beat Trump?
I have my powers of clairvoyance.
Since you
have-
lost
have
that
been-
machine and
Huh?
since you lost your,
My
wizardry machine. and
Yeah, I
big.
lost that because I thought Bosom Buddies was going to go 7 years. It's 2 years out. Can anybody tell? I don't know. You guys know how this works. I mean, let's hold on. I mean, it's going to look like Hollywood Squares up there after a while. It's going to be so many. The mayor of Indiana, Pete Balluglia, to block, please. Pete, true or false? The TARP coverage was originally going to let GM go out of business. True or false? You know, I don't know how we've got so many things to listen to and a long time to go. So let's see what crumbs fall out of that colander, shouldn't we? Before we decide. I mean, they all got great ideas, I guess. You know, but we got a long way to go. But this is your job, and so you love it. I quite frankly, I can only take this for a few minutes a week.
Yeah.
The ongoing, and I love, that John Meacham is on one of my favorite networks, and 9 of the shows that are on there. Sometimes you just get a cot at MSNBC because you're on with Ari Melber, and you have Joy. You're on every show that comes on for a while. That's right, yeah. Doesn't sometimes Brian Williams just say to you, will you say what you said on our network 6 hours ago, for our audience as well? But it's the ongoing thing, and the questions that always crack me up. What does this mean? Or, so what is going to happen in the future here? Can you, sir, guarantee us one way or another? As though that we're playing a game of, the game of life or something like this. It's not a board game. And I can only take the constant focus on it for so long. I don't want to come off this way, but I yearn for the really great half hour of news a night. Because the fact is there really is only about a half hour of news, but because it's a 24-hour news cycle, they play it 48 times in the course of a day. So I'd really just look, man, just give me Eric Severide and Sandra Van Oker to put things in perspective, and I'm good for the day. Then I'll go back and find out some more tomorrow.
I think one of the important questions about the post-Trump landscape is, will people run back to a standard politician with a traditional resume and regard this as some absurd failed experiment? Or, as Shakespeare said, will the appetite grow from what it's fed on? And if people no longer think politics will solve problems, will they just want more entertainment with people like Oprah or George Clooney or The Rock or Kanye?
Oh, well, the smartest thing Shakespeare ever said was, let's kill all the lawyers. I got news for you. A groan is as good as a laugh, you guys. Nothing wrong with that. But he also said we are all times subjects. So I think an awful lot of people would actually find themselves yearning for boring politicians that just take care of votes and policy and slowly get things done. And you just jump to a conclusion that everybody who has a job that they got because enough people voted for them to put in office would see it, that their job being the most, their duty is to just carry on the business of government. I think people would yearn for that. Everybody except the 24-hour news media.
Me too.
That this is the other thing. Forgive me. How many times do you see breaking news tonight? All day, breaking news. I love it when somebody lashed out, and then you cut to so-and-so, the acting secretary, lashed out today at the media by saying, and he said, well, you guys, you see, here's the clip. I think you guys got that kind of wrong. See, he lashed out, and that's breaking news. I think it would be great in order to have a time where the breaking news is actually kind of laughable, and even people who are watching it at home realize that's not breaking news. They're just trying to fill time. We'll be right after this commercial from Cialis. Which is
See, Meacham is just jealous because Doug Brinkley called you America's first historian.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Boy, that must make you guys feel great.
Switching from Shakespeare to Alfred Hitchcock. Hitchcock said the most important element of a good movie is a great villain. Trump is the press's villain, and the press are his villain. And in the beginning of the administration, you sent the Washington Press Corps a new espresso machine for the White House briefing room. And last year, you got into the head of Ben Bradley for your role in the Post. Jill Abramson, the former top editor at the Times, has a new book out that looks at the business of journalism. She writes that much of the coverage of Trump is now warped, and a big reason for that is because Trump is making everyone so much money and saving, print newspapers or newspapers. Do you agree that the coverage is warped and that covering Trump poses a conflict of interest for reporters, since he's making it rain cable contracts and salary boosts? John? I know.
I feel like I was just riding on the observation car of the bullet train.
Sorry, that was a long question.
Yeah. I think you're asking above my pay grade here, Maureen. I have no security clearances issued by the National Defense. Let's just understand. First of all, we're not in a movie. Movies have understandable backstories. They have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, very beginning, middle, and end. There is an antagonist usually. There is a protagonist. There's always some sort of quest that goes on in which someone is trying to learn something, and the executives always demand that you add a speech in which someone explains exactly why they're doing what they're doing. When my father first taught me how to ride a horse in the river, I realized then that my true dream was to raise an entire farm of swimming animals, and I am not going to give up on that dream. That doesn't happen in real life. It happens in movies. And by the way, that happens in some of the shittiest movies you've ever seen. And I know this because I've been in some of them. So the idea that we have this juicy bad guy that somehow promotes this fabulous entertainment that is called our daily lives is cockamamie. It's upside down. It does not work into a standard form. It doesn't work into a beginning and a middle of an end. We are the first draft. You guys are involved in the first draft of history. And you know what you do with an awful lot of first drafts of whatever you write? You throw it the fuck away because it's so wrong. And it's right for a little bit, but then you take one little nugget in there and you realize, well, we were close to something there, and you continue along. This anomaly that we're all watching and investing in is that. It's some kind of train wreck version of an anomaly. You know what it's like? I think this is it's like the Fire Festival. We got guys that tweet like crazy and have all sorts of people dealing with social media, and they realize that, oh no, we're just going to get somebody else to cater food for $1 million. I'm not worried. It's in April. That's no problem. We can make that happen. Hey, Ja Rule is going to sing. It's going to be fantastic. And it's just a disaster in every way, shape, or form. It was obviously going to be a disaster in every way, shape, or form, because the people who were in charge of it were absolute charlatans that thought that because they had the job, they could do the job. And life does not operate that way. Movies do, but life itself does not operate that way. So there will be a kind of like spinning that will continue along, and there'll be breaking news, and on one side of the political dial, it'll be breaking news that will cause fear and outrage and xenophobia. And on the other side of the political spectrum on TV, it will be nothing but kumbaya and Hershey's Kisses, and everything will be absolutely wonderful. And somewhere in the middle of that great bell curve will be, guess what? All the rest of us just getting on with the one damn thing after another of our lives. That's what I think. I think actually life is much more. I learned in college, and I'm not doing this because my good friend Derek Jacobi is sitting in the front row. But if you look at the structure of Shakespeare's histories, they actually are bell curves. It's a 5-act structure in which the most important thing, the great plot device, comes right in the middle of the 3rd act, Act 3, Scene 3. It's all a build-up to that, and you get to that place, whether it's Richard II or Richard III or Henry V, and from there it ends up carrying out the rest of the play with providential certainty that it can really only go one way. And I think we're in the middle of we're somewhere in the Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 of whatever the Shakespearean drama, and when we get to Act 3, Scene 3. The rest of it is going to become evident. And then after that, you just wait till Osric shows up, or Richmond. And someone is going to be running around at some point with a golf bag over his shoulder saying, a course, my kingdom for a course.
Wow. Yikes. Well, I just did a piece.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
I gotta say, that was not bad. That was not bad.
Yeah, I just did a piece comparing Trump to King Lear, but, howling at the wind and...
All righty. Very good.
But when I asked Michael Kahn, the head of the Washington Shakespeare Theater, he said Trump wasn't complex enough to deserve to be a Shakespearean character.
Did he say who?
Well,
our
he said
president
if
should
he
be?
were one, he'd be late Lear, but he doesn't have enough parts. He's not a man of parts. So, all right, I like to refer to Trump as the Rosemary's Baby of social media politics and reality TV. When we talked last year,
Of reality TV? Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
When we talked last year, you made a really smart point that the Apprentice people had admitted that the show made the Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic
yeah.
City, which was falling apart and stank, as you put it, look glossy in an effort to sell the image of Trump as a successful businessman. The New Yorker elaborated on your point in a big piece last month that really shows how Donald Trump is a big phony creation of Mark Burnett, and that White House aides have to handle him the same way many of the producers on the show did. How do we manage that when the presidency is treated as a set?
I just got here about an hour ago.
I know my questions are too long, but
And I'm not so sure they're questions, Maureen.
it's true.
Not that I don't agree. Well, look, I think in any politicians, there's this kind of like baloney image that they try to foster. I mean, remember when one of them, didn't Lamar Alexander drive around in an old pickup truck in a plaid shirt saying, I'm just an ordinary guy? And I love it when Mitt Romney was running for president, all of a sudden he'd where he'd be in front of a bunch of hay bales somewhere in Wisconsin. He'd have creases down his jeans and a perfectly tucked in check jacket that's been perfectly rolled back at the sleeves. This is all just bad imagery that goes on. And one of the things that the media never ever does is say, standing in front of a fake set during a posed photo op, candidate blah, blah, blah said blah, 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 in order to get people to say, in order to get family farmers to vote for the ticket. This is all some degree of imagery and puffery and charlatanery. And I think one of the reasons that I think we have now an abiding affection for the likes of Ronald Reagan, it was because he really was that guy to a degree. He really was kind of a guy who told stories about baseball in Omaha. And he really, he was an ideologue that sort of like practiced what he preached. I heard this story about, tell me, Carl, you might know this from your Republican Party bona fides. Did he not sometimes, Ronald Reagan, meet somebody in the White House, hear their story, like write him a check for a couple of $100? Let me help you out. And all the times I heard that sometimes the people wouldn't cash the checks because it was written by Ronald Reagan. And so there was Ronald Reagan hearing something, and he said, well, let me help you out on that. And I think that's there is a type. Is there any, you'll know this better than I, are there any politicians like that? Is there anybody that you can trust? Is there anybody that you can look at on social media and say, yeah, that's kind of is a reflection of who they are, as opposed to some thought out version of what they should be, some planned program concept of what they should say. Aren't we all just looking for some degree of authenticity that will bleed through the camera somewhere? And aren't we all, unfortunately, all right, yeah, okay, all right. And aren't we kind of like amazed when we're the only ones that can kind of see through how inauthentic something is? Anybody who had gone to the Taj Mahal, even when before it went bankrupt, looked at it and said, this place is a hunk of junk. And you're going to make money by me because I'm going to throw some more silver dollars into the big Keno wheel? I don't get it. But there is some version of that says, no, it's really fun and glamorous to be in a place like the Taj Mahal, and there's some version of, I remember, look, I'm not nearly this, you are dragging me into politics. I'm going to bounce this off your red head if you make me mad. But remember back when our president was tweeting in order to speak directly to the American people and getting around the news media, and now he is tweeting and they're saying, well, look, he's just tweeting. Don't take it too seriously, because he's just up late at night because who knows why, but he's got nothing else to do at 3:15 in the morning except tweet stuff and misspell things. So so which is it? So I'm getting off I'm not even sure what my point is, Mo. But I'm going to tell you right now, we just had some of the best Mexican food place. What was the name of the restaurant? Casa Nueves. It's just right down the street. Damn, that was some good enchiladas. And I think it's the enchiladas talking right now.
Yeah, well.
But hit me another one, whether you're insightful, concise questions, and I'll see what I can
Well, if you can fake authenticity, you can fake anything. Right?
Absolutely.
This is a shorter question. So when you played Ben Bradley, Sally Quinn said she wanted to try and give you some advice about, in the original script she read, they had been cursing kind of like an Irish Catholic, where he would say Jesus, Mary, and Joseph or something. And she was saying that she told you the kind of thing he would really say when he came into the newsroom was like, keep your peckers up.
Yeah, keep your peckers up.
Yeah. So I just thought that was funny. I guess that's not a question either.
No, that's not a question. Let me turn that into a question.
Yeah.
I think the thing, I actually had met Ben Bradley a couple of times, and what I liked in all of what I had done with him was two things: how much he loved the job of cracking the stories. He loved the job. It was just a fun job to get out and put out the paper. And the other thing he said, there's this great, I listened to it every day before we would go into shoot. It was an interview from the Poynter Institute. That's a well-known place. And he said, Well, I was a young reporter, and I was sent to interview the chief of police, and I could not believe that an elected official would lie so outrageously about something as silly as an arrest. But there it was, and that's what you have to learn, is you can't take anything at face value. And what I was refreshing about that is that the police chief lied, he knew it was a lie, and that was what the truth was, that a known lie actually turns out to be a truth somehow. And so then what do you end up and I think his great thing about putting out the paper in those halcyon days. And by the way, I'm going to ask anybody, can we please stop bringing up Watergate again and again on the course of the evening news? It's like in order to put some perspective on the current situation of the day, someone's going to talk about what happened in 1973. Do we have a Barry Goldwater that will walk up to the White House and say, Mr. President, you don't have the votes? I think we need to leave Watergate where it is. The same way if in 1973 you were going to bring up something about, the Bobby Baker hearings or something like that. It was an anachronism then, and I think is an anachronism now. Have I answered a question that didn't exist in the first place?
You answered the question that wasn't a
Okay.
question. So when we talked about your book when it came out, I asked you about Harvey Weinstein. You were one of the first men in Hollywood to denounce the horrible stuff that was happening, and I'm just curious.
A brave choice.
Yes, very, very.
I was
brave.
real. I went out on a
Yeah,
limb there.
you
I
did.
could have. Man, that was. That could have come back to bite me hard if I hadn't been so brave in order to say, yeah, that's creepy.
So has anything changed?
Well, an awareness has changed. The dialogue has changed. I think you have to say, well, what is the change that you are seeking? What is the change that is actually going to last, that is going to have purchase for those of us that are still in the business, and how's it going to alter the way business is done? And I think two things. I think there is an awful lot of righteous opprobrium, if that's the word I'm looking for, that is now not just hoped for in the workplace, but demanded, codified, said this will not stand. And that means everything from outright sexual assault to what's inappropriate flirting. That's got to change, because let's be grown-ups, for crying out loud. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect, too, is I think an economic parity, that an awful lot of people are saying, I am going to make a certain decision here in order to bring about a 50-50 employment opportunities and payment opportunities regardless of gender. I think that is improving. Whether or not nothing has changed overnight, but I think that it's on the uptick. But at the same time, I'm a white male, and I'm the last person you should ask. I can't give you evidence about this other than say, hey, I ask women directors all the time if they want to work with me, and that's the place that I can go right now. But if it's really going to change, I think you'd have to ask somebody who has not had the opportunity to do the work and has gone into and just call it an interview session, wondering if they were going to have to be prettier or flirtier or somebody they are not in order to get a job that can pay their health benefits and put their kids through school. I think that's the bigger place.
And speaking of that 1% of women directors, your friend Penny Marshall just passed away. She was amazing. I talked to her for my piece on women directors, and
What'd you say?
she was just talking about what it was like when she started, and how I think that she was just able to bowl through a lot of the problems because of her force of personality.
Yeah, she did have a forceful personality.
But I just wondered if there was a story, your favorite story you'd like to share, or
Well, Penny was the, she was the boss. I mean, she drove us nuts. She was, she shot a lot of times making movies with Penny was movie making by attrition. I said, Penny, how long are we going to shoot this? Until I have everything. Well, when are you going to get anything? I don't know. I'm going to be in an editing room 8 months from now. And I said, I need this shot. How come I don't have that shot? It's because I didn't shoot it, so I want to shoot it now because I might need it in 8 months. And I said, well, boss, if you put it that way, I understand, and I'll do everything I can in order to give you what you want. She was an artist in that way. And she, we made 2 awfully good movies together, but I miss her.
Yeah,
She
really
was great.
cool woman.
And Nora, I've worked with a lot of, Maureen, I don't know if you realize, but I'm one of those guys who's worked with a lot of women directors. And I find the only difference is the quality of the catering.
I asked another of our mutual friends, Lorne Michaels, what I should ask you, and he replied, I should say, you have hosted Saturday Night Live in 4 different decades, starting in the 80s. And I said to him, but what's the question? And he said, I really just do setups now. But if you're stuck, you can always go with what's changed the most.
Oh, it's kind of intriguing. Okay, this is actually something that could be like media related. Look what Saturday Night Live is. It has remained appointment television. You can watch it on Sunday. It's all over. You catch it up in bits and pieces. But when something happens during the week and they're in production, everybody wants to know, what is Saturday Night Live going to do with this? And the last time I did the show, it was actually the last show when we didn't know who was going to be president. And it was the debate was on a Thursday night. The show airs on Sunday. And the entire building shut down because everybody on the show was watching the final debate in order to put together the cold opening. Saturday Night Live still has that immediacy of it that is not the same as social trending or social media or posts or something like that are put together. Saturday Night Live still happens in the moment. Everything else happens after the moment and is editorialized or commented upon. Saturday Night Live still starts the conversation the moment that it goes on the air, and that is kind of a wonderful aspect of television at its best, in that you have to watch in order to know what's going on, and you have to be there, and you actually want to get it first. So Lorne Michaels, he should be coasting, and that whole show should be some other iteration of what it is now, but it always gets into this cycle where it ends up being I'm not going to say the best, or maybe not even the most immediate, but it is the most, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the most classic version of what the instant media can do. It's every Saturday night, it's like the Super Bowl. It's a thing that's happening before your very eyes, and you want to see it dished out right there. And I've done horrible skits on Saturday Night Live, and I've done horrible episodes of it. But it's always still like I think few other places are in show business. The countdown to that show going live is unlike anything else that you will expand. Anything else that's left in show business, to tell you the truth. There's nothing like it left in the world. Not since Ed Sullivan went to pre-tape. Ed Sullivan was the Fred Waring of our... I'm surprised Ed Sullivan didn't get a rise out of you. I would have thought that. You remember Ed Sullivan, don't you? Put away your golf clubs.
Did you see Steve Martin playing Roger Stone on Saturday? Because Roger Stone has been called the sinister Forrest Gump of American politics.
All right. I guess, why would he be the sinister Forrest Gump of American politics?
I think because he has...
Because he's in love with Jenny?
Yes.
Because he lost Bubba in Vietnam? Interesting. I did see Steve do Roger Stone. Yeah. What I loved about Roger Stone's arrest was the way his tummy appeared under his polo shirt. when he went like that. I wouldn't wish that photo on my worst enemy, which might happen to be Roger Stone, but it's like, dude, no. You either got to tuck that polo shirt in or don't raise your arms above your shoulders, because you don't want to see that little pooch right there, that little kind of like midriff shot there. It's not flattering on any man, no matter how many people he's lied to.
Okay, so in 2017, the MTV Movie and TV Awards made the decision to stop handing out separate trophies for best male and female performances. Do you think the Oscars could ever go gender neutral, and should it?
No.
Okay. Okay, so,
But, I don't think the earth has cracked wide open because MTV stopped giving out gender-based awards. I think it's a fine and dandy decision that they made. But I don't have a problem with the boys versus girls on that one. I think I think it works out okay. Am I wrong? Have I lost the audience by taking this position? I don't know.
no.
I wish the Academy Awards just happened sooner. That's the only thing I care about. I wish it came up earlier than a month from now.
I don't want to end tonight without talking about your book, because you are really...
Please do, because we got 90 seconds left.
And guess what? This question...
You guys are in trouble. There's 5 of you.
This question is like 5 pages long. So I'm going to try and say it quickly that you're a really good writer. I'm haunted by many of the characters you drew. And when I read it, I was kind of surprised because of your buoyant public persona, that there was that streak of melancholy. And, one of the stories is one maybe that was based on your mom about, how the little boy the marriage breaks up, the little boy is living with the moody father and the step siblings, and the mom comes in a cloud of perfume and a red roadster and red lipstick, and the little boy is so excited to spend the weekend with her. And you had said that, you couldn't remember a whole bunch of times when you were alone with your mother and even your father. And, I just was really impressed by, the way you handled sort of darker periods in your life. But I just wondered, I know we only have 2 minutes, but I just wondered, you talked about how everyone expects you to unleash the charm monster, but obviously there's another side.
Well, we're all cracked vessels, and I'm not about to discount the fact that I fall into a well-practiced self-defense mechanism of cracking wise, occasionally dropping the F-bomb. I'm not afraid of that. But look, this is the work that I do. I do it and I love it because it demands a type of introspection and a journey that sometimes I'm attracted to, wanting to go into it, and other times I'm dragged kicking and screaming into the reality of the emotion that you have to do. So much of what we do as actors, on one hand, there is the image of the high wire act, in which, if the actor isn't walking that wire perfectly, he'll fall over and embarrass himself and maybe hurt himself. But I think the other image of it is the human being that is going to have to go into a confessional and say something deep and dark about not just themselves, but again about how they feel. And the stories in the book, I would say, do not have, outside of Nazi soldiers in one of the stories, there's no bad guys in it, because life is just goofy in this way. And the best people in the world can let you down. And sometimes the story that it's called A Special Weekend, and I think the worst thing that any of the parents are doing in that book, in that story, is not letting the children that they are in charge of know that things are going to be okay. They actually don't say anything to them. They just say, this is what life is. And I'm a parent now. I got 3 grandkids. I got 4 kids of my own. And I have come to understand that our job, and anybody can do it if they decide to, our job as caregivers is to give care. Our job is to see to it that as long as possible, our offspring or the people in our lives that we are in charge of can live as carefree as possible for as long as possible. And that can't always be the case. But in that particular story about that was based on an awful lot. In fact, I sent it to my siblings when I was all done. I said, look, this isn't exactly who we are, but we're all in here. And they all recognized themselves in it, and they all had moments in it that were just like that. And what it really does, it comes down to is a perspective that as we become socially conscious of our place in the world, in the zeitgeist, we end up learning things about the people that we love. That story there, the little boy, he wants to go back to see the house that he lived in. And it's the only other house he's ever lived in, and he's only 9. He's only 9 years old. He's lived in 2 houses. This one where he lived for 7 of his years or 8 of his years, and the one that he's in now. And he looks on it, and it holds absolutely everything that he knew about the world in it. The windows, the front yard, the tree, everything about it is that this is where I was shaped, and this is the place that I come from. But for the mother that is in there, it's the house where her life was destroyed. It's the house where she walked out of. It's a house where her marriage and her dreams and her heart was absolutely broken, and she had to do the worst thing anybody could possibly do in certain circumstances, and that is to walk out on her kids and her husband for reasons that had to happen, but knowing that the moment that she did that, she was actually placing a burden on her children as opposed to allowing them to live carefree. There's a way in order to go back and sort of to examine it and understand both sides of it. I didn't start writing that story about my mom. I was going to write it about a confused little boy. And the confused little boy is there, but in the process of it, I ended up examining this a woman who, my joke is that my parents pioneered the dissolution laws for the state of California. They got divorces long before anybody famous got divorces. I could have called my mom Zsa Zsa if I wanted to. She got divorced so many times and took up with new husbands. All of it was some degree of pain for them, and none of them landed them in a better place than they left.
But you lived in 10 houses in 10 years?
Yeah, I moved around a lot as a kid, yeah.
We're out of time, but Jamie asked me, because of all your amazing work on World War II movies and raising money for the World War II Museum, and this is the theme of the festival, World War II, and I just wonder, given all the nationalism in Europe and everything that's going on, if you ever worry that the lessons of World War II might be forgotten.
The lessons of history are constantly forgotten. No one is good at remembering those lessons. Yeah. No one is, no matter how great the historians are, or the storytellers are, or the playwrights are, in order to bring them back again and again and again and again. But you're always there's a fabulous book, it's called A Tiny History of the World by, pardon me? That's it. That's exactly it. And he ends up laying it out absolutely perfectly. That in the history, there's always been some knothead who said, I know what's best for my people. And he goes out and conquers the entire world, his world, and brings what's best for his people. And then as soon as he dies, it all just falls apart. And sometimes they have names like Buju the Magnificent, and he conquers the entire world, which means this valley from that river to that river. and that's it. My entire world. And then he falls apart. And then and some other, who were some of them in there? Like Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan. And there's always somebody that says, I'm going to take over more and more of the world because this is how it happens. And it's going to happen again. And it's happening in some version of what we're looking at right now. And yeah, there's a bunch of knotheads everywhere that can put together just enough members of a parliament or a government in order to hold sway for a while. But it doesn't last. It can't last because cracked vessels don't hold water. They leak. And as they do, righteousness becomes evident to the people who seek it. And there are more people in the planet Earth who are looking for a fair deal, that want to live in peace and feed their kids, get to know their neighbors just enough in order to understand it, and will put up with an awful lot of differences, even though it's probably more glamorous not to. And you could probably attract a bigger crowd by being angry at something that's going on. But even in our own country, I grew up. There were fist fights at our Thanksgiving tables about Vietnam. I knew people there were riots in the streets. I lived in Oakland, California, a city that was perpetually on fire for one reason or another. If it wasn't race, it was war, it was crimes, it was all sorts of stuff. And in a lot of ways, this ain't nothing compared to that. But it's all relative. So what have we learned? That we're right back in some other version of the same thing. And you don't want to be naive and kumbaya and saying this too will pass. Sooner or later, enough people will take to the barricades, and the barricades will be in the right places, and things will change. In order to throw one back on your side of the street, Mo, there's an election coming up around the corner. It's in 2 years, and it's not just about who's going to be president of the United States. It's going to be about who's taking Sonny Bono's place, who's going to be the water commissioner, and who's going to run the library, and who's going to be the congressman, and who's going to be the senator. And you know what? That is going to be the wheel of change that is not going to solve every problem, but will get us along to whatever the next step is. And that's why the greatest concept that has ever been put down on paper is one that we have become bored with and take for granted. But every time it comes back around to us, we say, well, that is just the most amazing thing I've ever heard. Actors often have very highfalutin dinner party conversations. And one of them was about forms of government, and we came to the conclusion that our democracy is the only form of government in the world, in the history of the world, that has guaranteed that a people get the leaders they deserve. And you could go back, and you could just say, and how did we come to this place? Well, I'll tell you, a bunch of white, slave-owning men who didn't want to pay their taxes figured out how to write down on paper, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare and guarantee the blessings for ourselves, and the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity, do hereby ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States. It's the most beautiful thing on the planet Earth. And it's why, over the long run, we will still be here and we will be okay.
I would like to say two things. You are a box of chocolates, Tom.
Okay, I'll take that.
And good night, sweet prince.
Ah.